So it's just a matter of time and resources. I mean, I can cite you some instances where there have been a number of cases that were reported online. They were submitted by witnesses through online web forms to a number of popular websites, and and twice over the past month, there were two cases, not only in my own city, but two which occurred and were reported within a mile of where I live. And yet, because the webmasters of those sites never bothered to contact me or ask me to investigate, and the witnesses themselves are anonymous, there's actually no way to follow up and investigate those reports, even though the UFOs were reported from just a matter of a few thousand feet from where I'm actually talking to you from right now. So that's just one instance, and just imagine of all the cases in Ontario and BC and Quebec that are not being investigated thoroughly.
Now, back in the I would say early to mid '90s, when we had a pretty good set of investigators right across Canada.
Yep.
In those days, obviously, we were doing a lot more work. Nowadays, it seems that, like you said, people have gotten pretty complacent and they just don't have the time to put into it. What do you think needs to be done?
Back in the days when you used to drag me all over the place to check
yes.
out. 18 years ago, when Tom said, "Okay, Scott, we got another one."
In God's country.
Yeah,
well, that's what I call boots on the ground research. Boots on the ground.
Yeah.
People that go out, they talk to people, they talk to witnesses, they take soul samples, they verify time frames, the whole bit.
And even just a matter of talking to the witnesses in person so that the witnesses can actually point with you in the direction that they had seen something, so that you get a better idea of the direction. One of my biggest frustrations is trying to figure out where the object was in the sky that the witness saw the object. You can't do that from most of the written descriptions that are posted online by either the witnesses or by webmasters, because somebody will say, well, it was up in the air and off to the left or something like that, which, there's no way of telling whether it was an aircraft or how fast it moved or whether it was a star or a fireball or what else was in that direction. There's no way to do that except through on-site investigation, and it's just a shame. Now, I know MUFON has been going back to that a little bit. They have been doing a concentrated effort in the United States, not in Canada that I'm aware, but in the United States through projects like STAR and a few others. And when I was at the MUFON conference, their annual conference a while ago, they spent some time training investigators, and the trouble is there simply aren't enough of them to go around, and it is a problem. If you remember a few years ago in Stephenville, Texas, when many people had reported seeing UFOs, MUFON sent a battalion of UFO investigators to descend on the area, and they did a good job of combing through all the witnesses' reports and doing some on-site investigations. That was very unique. It's not done very often because they don't have the resources, but of course it occurred in Texas, not far from the former MUFON headquarters, where still a lot of MUFON investigators and researchers reside. MUFON now is headquartered in Colorado, and when there were some cases out there recently, they were able to mobilize a lot of people. So it depends on the region, it depends on the resources, and the training that some people have.
Yep. You used to put out a magazine called the Swamp Gas Journal.
That's true.
Do you still do that anymore?
No, I mean, that's snail mail, Tom. That's
snail mail.
That's an antique. Well, actually, what happened is that antique. Yeah, I did actually publish electronic versions of the Swamp Gas Journal, which was a simple UFO zine talking about cases and new things that were happening in ufology, and that was available online until sometime in the 90s. I don't know when the last one was. And then it became a little, even that became time-consuming. And now the advantage is we can do that now with blogs and Facebook and all this other social media. A lot of those issues are archived. Magazines in general, UFO magazines in general, are having a tough time. I mean, UFO Matrix and UFO Magazine and all those other incarnations just simply can't make a go of it. And other magazines and journals like MUFON Journal and International UFO Reporter and publications like that, they're having a hard time making a go of it because by the time things are published, it's all old news, and you can find out a lot more information more speedily online. So subscriptions are dropping. It's very, very tough in all fields, not just ufology, of course, but in all fields to keep magazines coming. But there are a number of really excellent blogs out there which people do maintain, and it's very worthwhile to get information about UFOs that way. The downside is that there are so many UFO blogs and websites out there. It's more likely than not that anyone looking for information about UFOs will find pretty lousy information about UFOs, because anybody and his dog can publish information about UFOs, and very often it does look like the dog has published the UFO information, considering the quality out there. So it's a problem. The good news is if you know where to look, you can find good information. Unfortunately, a lot of people publishing information these days are not necessarily the most informed.
Now, how do you think? What do you think should happen now to change it back to how things were? Considering the information age right now has changed it so much.
Right now, and I guess the problem is I'm not sure we can go back. The good news is with things like social media, we can get the word out a little bit easier. I really liked reading Leslie Kean's book, which is fairly new, about UFOs, pilots, and government individuals. It's a very long title that I can never remember, but her book offered one possible solution to getting good UFO information, and that was by getting a real center for UFO information, or a repository where information can be flow in and flow out fairly easily. There is a call to try and get the United States government to be a little more open in releasing UFO documents. We have documents about UFOs from many, many countries around the world. Canada has been very transparent compared with many other countries, and the United States certainly isn't. We don't have much in the way of UFO reports from an American's perspective in terms of government cases since about the early 1970s, shortly after Blue Book was dissolved. After that, we don't know what cases are really on file, and to what extent UFOs are being investigated or reported by American military officers. So there's a number of directions we can go. I'd like to see a central repository somewhere, but unfortunately, following the death of Alan Hynek, back 10, 12, 15 years ago now, there hasn't been one voice to speak on behalf of ufology, and that's a problem, because ufology right now is not unified, and it's something that needs to be done before we can move ahead. I mean, debunkers and skeptics have their own voices, whether they be Phil Play or James Oberg or Robert Schaefer or whoever. And it used to be that Carl Sagan was the stalwart voice of the skeptics, and I don't think anybody's really filled his shoes either. Christopher Hitchens, not so much. Dawkins, Oberg, Play. Nobody has really stepped up and been able to fill. Even after the death of Phil Klass recently, there have been a number of voids. So the voices of ufology and also the voices of skeptics have been really diffused, and it's a problem that I don't see an easy resolution. I don't see an easy solution.
Well, after this break, we'll come back and we'll continue discussing it.
AlternativeLifestyleProducts.com is your gateway to over 500 products ranging from herbs to pain relief products, health, and well-being. AlternativeLifestyleProducts.com is dedicated to educating and empowering you to make the best possible informed decisions about what products you can use to improve your health and well-being. Visit AlternativeLifestyleProducts.com and bring about change in your life.
If you suffer or know someone that suffers from back pain, knee pain, or any other chronic or sports-related pains, you need to visit LapingoProducts.com. Dealing with pain can affect every aspect of your life, which is why our products are designed to bring you real relief. Our products are not only easy to use, effective, and safe for the entire family, but our prices are competitive and offer a complete satisfaction guarantee. Visit LapingoProducts.com. Real life solutions for pain-free living.
And we're back. So, Chris.
So, Tom.
I almost lost you there for a second.
Yeah.
Do you find that in the States, they always have this problem with their government, and a lot of the information, that they received, they had to go through a real hard time trying to get it through freedom of information. Whereas here in Canada, it seems that we have a much easier time to accessing files.
Right, and it's always been like that. In fact, there was a bit of an excitement about a year ago when somebody noticed that the National Archives of Canada had put up some PDFs of UFO documents online, and they said that the Canadian government had just released 5,000 pages or something like that of UFO documents, and this shows that there's this movement to release documents all around the world by governments. The trouble is that those documents had been available all along. If you went to the National Library, National Archives, and I've gone there a number of times in Ottawa to look at them, and they're readily available. All that happened was that somebody scanned them in and put them up. So it's not that they were released, they made them available. And even the cases that I get every year, I don't know how many, I don't get many, I get maybe 20, 25, 30, something like that, reports through government channels every year. I don't think that those are all the cases that are actually filed through government channels. I mean, there's certainly going to be military cases that I won't have access to because my clearance isn't high enough, and so forth. And I know cases where objects in the sky were investigated by police and RCMP, but I never received those particular files. So I know that there is a good batch of data which is certainly unavailable to researchers still, and for good reason. This whole disclosure movement that people get very excited about, I think it's a red herring. I don't believe that if there are secrets being kept that will blow the whole lid off of UFOs and society and little green men and pickle jars and the whole thing, underground bases and you name it, if there really is that, I really doubt whether we're going to find any of that information. It will never be released because secrets of a very deep importance are never really released. And I point to the Manhattan Project, which was many of the files were classified for long after the war, so many of the Contragate files only came out under a lot of coaxing, and I just happened to stumble upon a reference to the Corona program, which was a satellite program which took photographs from satellites, and then the film canisters were dropped down to Earth and picked up by Navy vessels. That project was almost completely classified. We didn't even have a whiff of that from, let's say, early 60s to about 1995 when they were finally declassified. And that's just, something taking pictures of Russian fishing boats and that type of thing. And what's interesting is the Corona program flew directly over Canada. many of the flights and pickups were actually in the Maritimes. So this is something that was going on at the same time as a lot of the UFO cases, and one can conclude that some UFO reports during these periods might have been something to do with some of those classified programs.